I'm Sarah, and I am our sustainability lead here at Eco Enclose. Today, we are going to chat about inner packaging. A lot of times, inner packaging comes up in sustainability questions because so many brands are looking to remove plastic from their supply chain. This right here is our 100% recycled flap and seal clear poly bag. But as of now, most apparel that is created and shipped to customers comes in one of these poly bags. We work with more and more brands who are looking to remove plastic from their supply chain. And because of that reason, we are looking at a lot of different options today to see how we can achieve what you need functionally, logistically, and sustainability for your inner packaging. Today, we are talking about 7 different options for packaging. Number 1 is a clear flap and seal bag. These are 100% recycled and made in the USA. 2 is a craft and seal merchandise bag, also made of 100% recycled content. 3rd is our glassine paper bags. These are curbside recyclable, but made with virgin inputs. 4th is a packaging paper Burrito Wrap. 5th is an EcoBand paper product wrap. 6th, we've got tissue paper. And 7th, last but not least, is hemp or raffia twine. So the first thing that we recommend you think about when you are choosing a new inner packaging product is your logistic model. There are 3 really main types of logistics models. There's really, really high volume brand whose supply chain, their finished goods factories, and their manufacturing occurs all over the world and can come together in several different DCs or distribution centers. The important part about these brands is that a lot of times their logistics systems require a lot of machinery and conveyor belts in order to get apparel from its finished goods factory to the DC and then to the customer. Those brands have to think a lot about what machinery they're using and how the inner packaging that they're packaging their products with is going to interact with those machines. The second type of logistics model that we see most frequently is a partially decentralized supply chain. And for those, it's mostly the mid-sized brands. They are using a finished goods factory or an outside contract manufacturer to make their apparel and their goods. And then they are shipping them to a DC or a distribution center to send them out to their customers. These mid-sized brands sometimes will outsource both of those aspects, both the production of their products and the distribution, or sometimes they will just outsource one or the other. So they're making their goods and using a logistics partner, or they are using a contract manufacturing partner and doing their own logistics and shipping. The third type of logistics model that we see is definitely the small brand. And these are folks who are making their products in-house. They are getting them ready for shipment and they're shipping them out to their customers all in one place. And for these folks, the supply chain is very small. It's a lot of times a really, really small footprint of location. After you determine the type of logistics model that you have, the next step is to think about the functional needs that your packaging and your apparel has. Some of the main functional requirements of apparel packaging include things like being translucent, waterproof, dustproof, covering the entire product or just a portion of the product, whether your product needs to be tamper evident, whether it should be flat packed versus rolled, whether it has to interact with conveyor belt systems, in which case it's tumbling and falling and moving quite a bit from its journey from the finished goods manufacturing location to the distribution center. Can you use one master poly bag instead of individual poly bags for individual products? Do all of your products need the same packaging type? Could most of them use a flap and seal bag and some of them use a glassine bag? And then lastly, what are the packaging speeds that you're used to and that your fulfillment center and logistics model requires? Clear poly bags are the way that most apparel is packaged, and that's simply because they are quite honestly the easiest things to use, and frankly they're very inexpensive per unit. So quite frequently we will work with customers who have their entire supply chain focused on these clear poly bags. So what are the benefits of a clear poly bag? First of all, they're transparent. You can scan through them for a barcode or for a UPC code. They're fully water resistant. They're dust and dirt proof. They're tamper evident for the most part. They have a full coverage of the product, so all of my product will be covered in inner packaging. They are consistent with flat packing methods. So if you are used to packaging your products flat and stacking them in master cartons and shipping to either retail distribution centers or to customers flat, the poly bag is a really great option. They are, for the most part, very compatible with conveyor belts. So these systems that require a lot of movement for the apparel from beginning to end, a poly bag is really hard to beat because that adhesive and the flexible nature of plastic really allows for the product to be kept safe, but also move very effectively through the supply chain. And then lastly, they're pretty quick to pack with. So the timing is pretty quick and makes for a fast fulfillment process. Next, we have the paper alternatives to the poly bag. These guys are both great because they are flat products, and so they allow for flat packing, and that increases the speed usually of the packing process. So Glassine and the Craft and Seal are both made of paper, and so they are not waterproof. However, they do have full coverage of the product. For the most part, they are very dust and dirt proof. They're tamper evident, and they allow for fast packing in both a distributed logistics system or a fully decentralized logistics system. One thing to note is our Glassine bags do have vent holes here that allows that excess air to escape and keep the product flat. The Craft and Seal does not have any vent holes at this time, but both allow for really maximal coverage of the apparel while using paper instead of plastic. One more thing to call out is that this Glassine material, although it is paper, it is transparent, so I can see through my product. And if I were to have a barcode here or an individual hang tag, I would probably be able to scan that very, very quickly. The Craft and Seal does not have that option. And so if I'm going to go with the Craft and Seal, and I do rely on stickers and codes in order to distribute my products, I would probably be applying a sticker to the outside to make sure that the product inside is correctly labeled. Here we have the two rolling alternative methods. So here I've got a paper eco band, paper product wrap, and here I've got hemp twine. There are some brands who also use raffia tie as well. Some of the important functional considerations for these two options are they are not water or dust proof. They don't cover the entire product. Some of them are tamper evident, but it's not the typical tamper evident. You can clearly tell if someone has opened a paper band, but a tie may be more difficult to tell if it's been tampered with. They are not flat packing compatible, and that is because they're rolled. And also, they don't work great on conveyor belts. They are not super robust in terms of their ability to move around and still look and function well. And the packing speed takes a little bit longer. So for here on our paper eco band, typically what we would do when packaging these is start here, fold over, and roll the product. So doing this allows us to still have our messaging to our customers, and these eco bands are 100% recycled and curbside recyclable. And what I would do here is tape this closed. You can also use glue dots to close these and keep them secured. And then for a hemp twine tie, I'm roll packing and tying together. So this is a situation where if you opt to go with either of these options, instead of using the individual poly bag on each piece of apparel, you could use a master poly bag inside of a large carton. And so frequently what will happen is at the finished goods factory, apparel is created and packed individually like this, and then placed in a larger, usually corrugate shipping container. And that can be standard RSC box, usually 10 by 10 by 10 or 12 by 12 by 12. And that itself is filled with one large poly bag, sort of like a garbage bag for apparel. And then individual pieces are placed in there and sealed down so that no dust or water can get to the apparel once it's packed in that master case. So that reduces the amount of plastic used quite a bit and still protects the products. Next up, we have tissue paper. Tissue paper is a good option for folks who are mid to low size volume. And a couple reasons for that is because it takes a little bit longer to put apparel into tissue paper and seal it. So that packing speed may be something that your logistics or your fulfillment team would be concerned about and trying to avoid. One benefit of if you're using white tissue paper is that it can still be fairly translucent, so I can see the color of my product through that. However, it's not translucent enough to typically have a barcode that I can scan through. Because it's tissue paper, it is not waterproof. However, because it will cover the entire product, it does have very good dust protection, and when flat packed, it allows for the packing speeds to be faster. We would not recommend using a tissue paper option for folks that are using a conveyor belt system, just because it won't do a great job of tumbling down those conveyor belts from one end of the other to the factory. And then I think the last most important part is our product we want to make sure is covered on all sides. So in this case, what I would do is use one sheet of tissue paper per product. Depending on your cost needs, that can be much more costly than using a poly bag. However, at higher volumes, we do see that tissue paper can be very cost competitive. This is our Burrito Wrap option. We call it Burrito Wrap because it's kind of like you're making a burrito or you're making a sub. And for this method, we use packaging paper. So I've got a couple different options here. This is a Kraft 40-pound paper. This is an indented Kraft. As you can see, more texture here for protection. And then lastly here is a newsprint paper. There are a lot of different options for packaging paper, and it's really easy to get them in 100% recycled content. One other great benefit is that they are curbside recyclable, and so your customers will be able to recycle it at home. So for this example, I'm going to use our Kraft 40-pound. In this situation, I will roll this. So roll packing is typically the way we go with burrito wrapping. And you're kind of just folding it and rolling it like a sub. This I would seal with either a piece of tape or a sticker. So some of the benefits here, your product is covered 100%, and so there is very good dust protection. It's also pretty tamper evident. If I was going to open this, it would be very clear that someone had tried to open it. However, it is not translucent. Because it's made of paper, it's not waterproof. It's also not flat packing compatible, and so it is rolled and may take up different volumes than flat packaged products. It may or may not work well on conveyor belts. We would recommend testing a lot of this option before implementing it at a large scale, just because the movement of product over the conveyor belts may allow for this packaging to loosen or not end up the way that you want your customer to see it. And then lastly, the packing speed. As you can see, that took me a couple seconds more than it would have taken to add to a flap and seal or a poly bag. And so that's something to keep in mind as well for this burrito wrap option. So the third factor that we think about when it comes to inner packaging is your sustainability framework. This is probably the part that we're the most excited about and that we think about the most frequently here at Eco Enclose. Our own sustainability framework is what helps us to make decisions about what type of packaging we want to make and we want to offer to the world. And so our own sustainability framework really centers quite a bit around material circularity, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. But the four main sustainability frameworks that I'm going to talk about today are the ones that we see most frequently with our small scale customers, our mid-sized customers, and our large scale customers. So those four goals are: number one, a plastic-free packaging; number two, packaging that has a very low carbon footprint, or that's aimed at reducing a company's overall carbon footprint for their packaging; number three is the goal of reducing the overall plastic footprint of your supply chain, not necessarily eliminating it completely, but reducing the amount of plastic used; and then fourth is material circularity. And that involves quite a bit of using materials that come from recycled content and recycled sources, and producing products that can be recycled in the end of their life back into that same product. Okay, so for plastic free, if you are a high volume brand, you have a very decentralized and automated supply chain system for your apparel, then going plastic free is going to be a little difficult and will present a few more challenges. And that's because conveyor belt systems work really, really well with a flexible material like plastic, but paper inherently has less give than plastic does. So that's something to keep in mind when you are testing out a paper option. So specifically, a glassine bag would work well, or a craft and seal bag. Glassine allows for you to scan through it, and so translucency, if that's something that you need, it's a really great option. The craft and seal bags are not translucent, so if you are using UPC labels or stickers, you can apply it to the outside of the bag to make sure that the SKU is properly noted. Some benefits of these two options: glassine and the craft bag are both curbside recyclable, and so your customers will be able to recycle it in their blue bin. One potential drawback of the glassine bag is that at this time it's made with virgin paper inputs, and whereas the craft and seal bag is made with 100% recycled content. So based on which sustainability framework is most important to you, whether it's using recycled content or if the functionality needs of having a translucent option are more important, those are two important factors to keep in mind. If you're a mid-sized brand and you're focusing on plastic-free, you have very similar options. You could also use a glassine bag or a craft and seal bag. But two other things that we have learned from some of the mid-sized brands that we work with and that we collaborate with on different sustainability initiatives is that you can also use a hemp or a raffia tie on products, or an eco-band paper wrap wrapped around products. The way that brands accomplish these two options in a halfway distributed system is that they will apply these around their products, pack them in a master carton, and protect them with one master poly bag instead of using an individual poly bag for each product. Doing this allows for them to reduce the amount of poly bags they're using by quite a bit. While it's not fully plastic free, they are moving in a very significant direction to reducing the amount of plastic in their supply chain. And quite frequently, when it arrives to the customer, that customer themselves will not have any plastic packaging that they need to discard. If you are a small brand or a one-man shop, you have a few more options for which packaging you'd use in support of your plastic-free goal. Some of these options are a glassine bag, a craft and seal bag, tissue paper, product burrito wrap, an eco band, and hemp twine. Some of the sustainability benefits that I'll touch on here: the burrito wrap with packaging paper, an eco band, craft and seal, and tissue paper are all made with 100% recycled content in the USA. The glassine and all of these options here, except for the hemp twine, are curbside recyclable as well. One important note is that tissue paper is recyclable in about 50% of standard curbside recycling bins in the United States. And if it cannot be curbside recycled, it is naturally biodegradable. That's one benefit of all of these options, is that they are naturally biodegradable because they're made with paper or plant-based fibers. Hemp twine is one that cannot be curbside recycled, so keep that in mind. Make sure that you're not telling your customers to recycle hemp twine because it won't make its way through the recycling system. However, for hemp and for eco bands, you both have a very low packaging footprint, just because you're using a lot less material than you would be if you used a Burrito Wrap, tissue paper, or either of these two paper bag options. The second sustainability framework we're going to talk about is reducing the carbon footprint of your supply chain. So when brands are really focused on reducing their overall greenhouse gas emissions within their supply chain, whether it's scope 1, 2, and 3, they tend to focus quite a bit on materials. The reason for that is different materials that are used tend to have a vastly different carbon footprint based on their production type and the material that's being used. So one common misconception is that paper is always better for carbon footprint. Based on all the LCAs we have done and those available by some of the leaders in this field, like the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, we know that plastic has a much lower carbon footprint than paper. The reason for that is the production of plastic takes a lot less energy and time to create versus paper, which requires pulping, repulping, recycling, and turning back into paper, all of which is very energy intensive. And in the United States, a lot of times can be powered by energy sources that are not renewable. And so paper actually has a higher carbon footprint than plastic. So for folks who are wanting to reduce their overall carbon footprint within their supply chain and within their packaging, the option that we always present is a 100% recycled poly bag. These will allow for all the functional needs that most brands will need, whether that's high volume or a one-man shop. And because they can have several different sizes and they're very customizable, you can reduce the overall footprint of the plastic being used as well. So this is something that we see quite frequently with some large brands who are looking to reduce the amount of plastic they're using and their carbon footprint, is they will opt for 100% recycled poly bags, but will also reduce the size of the poly bag and make sure that their products are being folded smaller so that the overall amount of plastic they need is less than it would be if packed flat. One important note for poly bags, because they are thin film number 4 plastic, they have to be recycled in a thin film drop-off bin. So we recognize that it is not always feasible or possible to completely remove plastic from a supply chain. It's especially difficult for brands who are very high volume or mid-sized brands who outsource a portion or all of their product production and distribution. So this third topic that we're going to be talking about is reducing your overall plastic footprint. And that is not necessarily the same as going fully plastic free. So reducing a plastic footprint in your supply chain will still have a really, really large benefit on your sustainability metrics and goals. However, you still will be able to have sort of a hybrid approach to what you use in your apparel based on what your logistics system needs. So quite frequently we will see brands segment their apparel. And so what that means is for products that really require a poly bag and are difficult to pack in paper alternatives, in this case that would be something like a coat, a jacket, outerwear, things that tend to be more difficult to wrap in paper or too bulky to put in a glassine bag or a craft bag, they will still use things like flap and seals. Another option is for white apparel. If you're shipping out white t-shirts, you really don't want that to show up to your customer with dirt on it. And so sometimes folks will still use a flap and seal or a clear poly bag for white apparel, and everything else that can stand to have a little bit of scuffing on it will use something like this, where the product is a little bit more shown in the distribution process. So by using a poly bag for when it's really necessary for things like bulky apparel or white apparel, and then transitioning the rest of your apparel over to paper alternatives, you can really reduce the amount of plastic that you're using in your supply chain. One other thing to note is that for poly bags, quite frequently folks will use a larger size than they need and then fold it down to cover. If you're trying to reduce your overall plastic footprint, another really easy option is to change the folding method of your apparel. So instead of folding something in a standard halfway fold, you can then fold it a second time, and that will just reduce the overall amount of space that product will take up in a poly bag, and will reduce the amount of size of the poly bag itself that you would need. And so if you can move all of your poly bags from 12 by 18, for example, down to 6 by 10, you're effectively reducing the amount of plastic that you're using by half, without necessarily giving up the functional benefits of the poly bag when it's needed. The fourth and final sustainability framework we're talking about is material circularity. That happens to be our most important framework piece at Eco-Enclose. Material circularity really means that materials are coming from recycled content, being made into a new product, and then are able to be recycled in existing systems. And so paper is a really great example of a circular material because it can be made with a very high percentage of recycled content, specifically post-consumer waste, and can be easily curbside recycled by consumers back into itself. And so our two options here that I have are a craft and seal bag made with 100% recycled content and very high levels of post-consumer waste, and then a 100% recycled flap and seal bag. So these two options tend to be the best for very high volume supply chains and brands. One great part about the flap and seal bags is that they are made from recycled content. Right now, this bag is 100% post-industrial waste. We have been able to see some flap and seals made with post-consumer waste. However, because of the nature of post-consumer waste being less uniform in material and spec, a lot of times the max amount of post-consumer waste we can get into a thin film bag at this time is about 50%. And so if you wanted to utilize post-consumer waste in your flap and seal bags, you would be able to, but it would be less overall recycled content at 50% than a post-industrial waste bag at 100%. A craft and seal bag is a really great option for circularity purposes. That's because it's made of 100% recycled content, very high post-consumer waste, and then your customers will know what to do with this as soon as they receive it. Paper is the most recycled material in the United States by volume, and so this option is really great for folks who want their customers to be able to have a fully curbside recyclable packaging experience. If you are a medium to small size brand and you're focusing on material circularity, any of these options would work very well for you. A 100% recycled flap and seal bag, tissue paper, eco band, burrito wrap, or a craft and seal bag. These paper options tend to be the superheroes of material circularity because they're made from 100% recycled content and they can be curbside recycled into paper once again. Flap and seals or any thin film poly tend to be more difficult because although they can be made with very high levels of recycled content, they're not curbside recyclable. They are still recyclable in thin film drop-off bins. Those can be found at major big box stores or major retailers or the grocery store down the street. You can recycle these the same places that you recycle plastic grocery bags. One thing that I'll call out, we do not consider glassine to be a very high circular product. And the reason for that is that at this time, this glassine bag is made from 100% virgin fiber, meaning that it comes from forests. Although it is FSC certified forests and responsibly harvested, we really believe that packaging that is circular comes from packaging in its previous life and can go to be made into packaging in its next life. To recap, there are 3 factors that you should think about when you are switching to a new inner packaging product. The first is your logistics model. The second is the functional needs of your packaging. The third is your sustainability model. We hope this was helpful. Check out our inner packaging guide for all of this information in written form, and reach out to our team if you have any questions about products or packaging sustainability questions. We're always happy to talk to new folks. Yeah, thanks for watching. Happy shipping.